Okay, good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and you're joining our session on green tech, innovation, and sustainable finance. And the objective is about transforming sustainable businesses and cities. So we have a very eminent panel with us from the industry, from the agencies, as well as in terms of overall support for the three areas that we will be focusing on today. So we have also one individual, one of the panelists connecting from Penang. Are we good? Okay, good. Sofia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can
All
you
right.
hear?
Thank you. So Sofia, you're on screen. All right. Okay. So in a short while, I'll let the introductions take place. So I'm not going to introduce the panelists, but we will get straight into the discussion areas. And usually this session is a very dangerous session, right? I can see people kind of relaxing themselves. So we want to keep you kind of sharp and alert. And please ensure the idea is going to be round robin. So when I ask a question, you have to ask a question. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Right, so there's a lot of candid discussions that happened this morning and this afternoon, and I like to maintain it the same way. I'm short of saying brutally honest, but I think it's going to help us make sure that three areas that is going to help us thrive needs to be the area of focus for today. And each of the panelists, I had a discussion with them, so they will be sharing about 5 to 7 minutes update, or what I would say top of their mind inputs, and then once they all complete, we will go into Q&A sessions with everyone. Okay? So I'd like you to keep in mind a couple of things as you start. One is making sure that we approach this from a smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth approach. The overall conversation today on green technology, innovation, and sustainable finance. So with that, I would like to invite our first speaker. She has requested for 1 or 2 minutes extra because she's dialing in from Penang. She cannot be here. She's Sofia Castelo, the lead environmental resilience community of practice for Think City. So we're going to let her connect, and she's going to share a deck. I think she'll be the only one who's presenting a deck. Am I right? Okay, so Sofia, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen, my deck?
Yep, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So first of all, thank you so much for the invite. It is an honor to be participating in this summit. The focus of my talk today will be about the future of cities and the need and even urgency for urban climate adaptation in Malaysia. I will be also presenting Think Cities program for adaptation for Penang Island. So very briefly, everyone knows that climate change is already in Malaysia. We are seeing warming, even without looking at data, and the data is telling us, showing us substantial warming. Even without looking at data, we can feel the temperatures are increasing. We also can see how changes in weather patterns are leading to flash floods and severe damage to property. And a quite recent effect or impact is decrease of food crops and causing the increase of prices of food. So not only these changes are already happening, but we need to understand the concept, the context of Malaysia. By being located in Southeast Asia, Malaysia is very vulnerable. Southeast Asia is actually one of the 3 areas in the world which will be hardest hit by climate change, together with India and Sub-Saharan Africa. Also, urban areas are going to be impacted the most. They were not at risk from heat stress in 2000, but will be in 2050. So the main impacts will be more extreme weather events, such as changes in weather patterns, increased rainfall leading to flooding, increase of heat waves, overall rising temperatures, and then increase of costs, not only food costs, but also energetic costs for air conditioning, and negative impact in human and ecosystem health. So this is actually a study from the World Health Organization from 2015. And in here, according to the scenario we are currently in, is that by 2050, Malaysia will have 200 days per year with heat waves. This is 10 times more than the country had in 1980. What are the strongest challenges for the country? Heat stress, due to its location near the equator, increased extreme weather events, reduced crop yields and increased food costs, coastal flooding, and regional instability with an increased number of migrants, internally displaced people, and refugees. The country also has specific advantages. It's foremost, it's extraordinary natural capital. There's also high potential for increasing climate performance because Malaysia is not doing so well. So there's a lot we can do still. And also the possibility of applying for international funding due to developing status. So now I'll present the Nature-Based Climate Adaptation Program. This is a program that Think City has initiated in 2019, together with MBPP, the local city council, JPS, and UN Habitat. It's a science-driven program in terms of design and also in terms of results and impact assessment. And it actually, we have targets and indicators in 10 SDGs in this program. The four main problems we face in the urban areas of Penang Island are heat stress. Actually, we have identified in the weather station in Bayan Lepas an increase of 1.5 degrees in atmosphere temperature since 1950. It's a very high increase. In terms of flooding, just in 2017, 4 years ago, the heaviest rainfall in Penang Island's history led to the loss of 7 lives and more than 1 billion ringgit in damages. And then in terms of social impacts, we have several vulnerable communities, and we know, and it was already mentioned this afternoon and this morning also, that women and girls are going to be disproportionately impacted by climate change. We also have understood that youth is unengaged in this issue, and this is very important because young people are going to be the most impacted. So we need to bring them on board and make them as much central as possible to the discussion. The fourth problem we identified are gaps in capacity. So most hospitals in Penang do not identify heat stress or heat stroke. No municipality adaptation framework has been developed yet. This is actually the first municipal adaptation program to have been developed for Malaysia. So we have developed everything from scratch. Also, there is no unit for disaster risk reduction or for climate change in order to address this issue in a holistic way. So this is actually just remote sensing on surface temperatures in Georgetown. And you can see here that between 1988 and 2019, the minimum temperature has increased 2.4 degrees and the maximum 8.7 degrees. We can also see that we can almost identify the streets that have trees because they are much cooler. And also, we also identify surface temperatures at street level without our thermal imaging camera. And we see here, this is a very green part of the city. We can see here in this picture that the maximum temperature is 40.1 degrees. So 1 hour after this picture was taken, we went to the UNESCO core site, to the most built up area in the city. So this is what we found. just 1 hour away, and I think it's 7 kilometers away, there's an increase of almost 30 degrees in surface temperatures. And this is because of the lack of green spaces. So according to identified problems, we've developed 4 identified components of the program. The first one is to use nature-based solutions to reduce temperatures by strategically planting trees and introducing green spaces in the city. The second is to reduce and, if possible, eliminate the number of flooding events by using nature-based solutions in upstream retention, blue-green corridors, and swales. The third component is to strengthen social vulnerability, social resilience by empowering vulnerable communities and women and girls. And the fourth component of the program is to reinforce institutional capacity in public health. So we have a pilot project for the detection of heat stress and heat stroke in 2 public hospitals in Penang. The creation of the Penang Climate Board. And last but not least, it's one of the most noted and praised components of our program, is the knowledge transfer platform, which will be created in order to mainstream a framework for municipal climate adaptation for all cities in Malaysia. This is just an illustration of some of our green strategies. So the expected outcomes, first, reduction of 1.5 degrees in temperatures in urban areas 6 to 8 years after completion of the plan. This decrease of temperatures can be up to 5 to 7 degrees in shaded areas. Reduced impact on public health, reduced flooding and GDP losses, reduced vulnerabilities, improved community readiness, and by assessing all impacts, we'll build capacity at national level because other cities will be able to assess which strategies are functioning more effectively. So we were, late last year, we were shortlisted together with 5 cities in the world, Miami, Khartoum, from Sudan, Dublin, and Salvador, for an European award given by EIT Climate Kick, which is the body for climate action in Europe, in the European Union. And we won the award. So it was, as you can imagine, very exciting. And we're very proud here in Penang for this. And also a second good news is that in October last year, the Adaptation Fund has endorsed our concept note, so our proposal for a funding of $10 million. This is also about climate justice. The proposal for Penang will be paid by international funding that's allocated according to the international agreements for transfer of funds from developed nations to developing nations. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't take too much time. Back to you.
Thank you, Sofia. I think you managed it within time. Appreciate you for sharing the science behind this approach of how you looked at for Penang City, and congratulations on the Climathon Award as well as on their funding. All right, so appreciate that, and let's get to our next speaker. He does not need any special introduction. Shamsul Bahar, Chief Executive Officer of Malaysia Green Technology and Climate Change Center. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anthony, again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. And well, actually, Sofia did a shift between virtual presentation and now we are looking at physical presentation. We are back in the old norm, and I hope we can stay that way. I'm from the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Center. We are an agency under the Ministry of Environment and Water. And the main task of Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Center is to do mitigation programs training the public, educating them, as well as introducing new technologies on how to mitigate climate change and also climate action. We are indeed in borrowed times. What Sofia have shown early on the climate change, the current situation they are facing in, all of the above are true. And what we're looking at is a situation whereby we would need the intervention of from all sectors, from businesses, from the public, as well as the members of parliament and civil society as well. It is very important that we understand as well the effects of climate change is here to stay if we do not intervene. And intervention is the priority that from every levels, segment of the society need to convene and work upon. And I would like to say that the objective of sustainable development does not lie alone with the government. Every segment of the society need to participate and always voice out what are the needs and the requirements that the government would put forth. This is very important. Being an agency that looks on the technology that we provide, we welcome very much of new technologies and innovation that come our way. Just to share that we are committed to the greenhouse gas emission of 45% reduction on the Paris Agreement that has already been signed. We are very much aware that there are a lot of inputs that need to be put in, as His Excellency, the British Commissioner mentioned earlier on. There are three aspects that we are looking in: on climate financing, on technology transfer, and also capacity building. So these three aspects are very much needed, and will be reaching the target as per what we have planned out. But do bear in mind that what we are looking for is more than that. It's beyond 45%. The commitment that the government put in, we need to reduce almost 400 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That is a huge impact. Just yesterday, we had a discussion with the Ministry of Transportation on a program that we will introduce in Johor. But that program alone just contribute only about 1% of the percentage that we are to address, which is 45% of greenhouse gas. So we need more programs as we go by. And just to also to mention that under Malaysian Green Technology Innovation Center, we have introduced a few blueprints. Number one, the Green Technology Innovation Roadmap that has already been discussed, and this goes across ministries. We are working together with MOSTI on this initiative. And under that blueprint, we are working on to get more innovation out of Malaysians. To have a sustainable country, we need to have technology coming from us, deriving from the local industries. So what we are working on is to rush to the industries, to the universities, as well as the industries are coming to us, looking at various aspects of the technology on how to develop those technology to work it within our space, within our Malaysian context, and how to ensure that the next generation would benefit from. The other blueprint that we just came out with, the low carbon mobility blueprint. This is where we are tackling the problem raised by the transportation sector. Almost 30% of the gas emission are being emitted by the transportation industry, and it is a huge amount. And annually, 7 million population, from the global population died out of the emission of carbon dioxide. So this is an issue that we need to address. And what we are working on is to introduce measures and also ways under our 4 quick wins. And one of them is the low carbon public transportation, where we will be introducing electric buses to have the connectivity, the last mile between homes and also public areas. This is something like a mass transportation where more than 10 passengers can ride on a certain vehicle going to a certain public interest area. If you look at the passenger vehicle that we have now, perhaps only 3 occupants at the max. But so we are looking at those measures, and also the introduction of electric vehicle as well. So what we are looking for is to have more of this, to populate the uses of green technology into the Malaysian context, Malaysian society, Malaysian usage. And with the effort of the with different agencies across, we would be achieving a certain numbers. But those numbers, again, those would not be the numbers that we are truly looking at, because we certainly welcome the partnership between the communities as well, and also the businesses. Because in order for a business to work, there need to be 2 parties. One is the seller, one is the buyer. And in this case, we are looking at the business have to work around the environment, how to have a sustainable environment in order for us to actually move forward. So these are the key aspects of green technology that we are pushing into the Malaysian usage and all. And we hope that with those blueprints and roadmaps that we crafted out, we're able to reach the targets of the reduction of greenhouse gas. I guess for a start, I should stop at that and let the question and answers flow in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Encik Shamsul, for sharing with us on the blueprint from the perspective of green tech, and as well as making sure that, glad to hear that electric buses are coming for last mile connectivity as well. In some cities it's already live, right? It's already active, but I think nationwide it'll give us an overall perspective. So with that, let's move to the next speaker. May I invite Nurul Hasanah, Head of Group Sustainability of FGV Holdings, to give her thoughts. Over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank KSI and an organizer of this summit for the invitation to FGV Holdings. And, being in the plantation industry, plantation sector, FGV Holdings, I believe everyone here would know that we are in the palm oil industry. And there are a number of issues facing the plantation industries. Mostly we are being assessed by how we comply or commit to our commitment with regard to the no deforestation, no peatland development, and also no exploitation. So if we were to talk to any players in this industry, the term NDPE, as what I described earlier, no deforestation, no peatland development, and no exploitation, is like a mantra to the industry, to the palm oil players. So you will hear this very often, and we will be asked as to, what have you done to ensure that your operations, do not encourage deforestation. And we're seeing an increasing interest from our investors, the banks, not only international banks, but also local banks are very much now, particular about how companies comply with sustainability standards, and how do you ensure that your operation do not violate these standards. So these are the areas that for FGV, in terms of meeting our commitment to deforestation, and what we have done so far, and we are being assessed there. You cannot hide, because the moment you expand your operation into virgin forest, the satellite will tell. So you will get customers, clients, banks calling you up and ask, did you just expand in this area? And did you do something in this area? So there is no room for any companies to avoid scrutiny from satellite image. So for FGV, I think what we have committed to is that we have no expansion in our operation for the one in Malaysia. And we have an operation in Indonesia. And we are committed to ensure that any land development is in line with the high carbon stock approach. So meaning that, you have to ensure that any expansion will not go into green area, green field, will be, there will be protection of HCV and biodiversity. And there must be a plan to ensure that these areas are not touched. So that has been our commitment, and it's clearly stated in our sustainability policy, which is accessible on our website. Same goes with the peatland development. You can tell from the satellite image, you cannot hide. And we are also looking at our suppliers. So FGV does not only supply to other people, but we also have small suppliers from smallholders. So the same obligation or commitment is also extended to our suppliers. And we have in fact suspended one supplier that developed palm oil plantation on a forest reserve area. It was a forest reserve area and de-gazetted, but still it was a forest reserve area, and there was no plan with regard to that development. And on part of FGV, we decided to suspend supply from that particular company. So that is with regard to how FGV, work on the implementation of our commitment to no deforestation. And I must also say that with regard to supporting the reduction in carbon emission, we have our palm oil mill effluent where we generated energy, electricity, from our mills and supply to national grid. And in some areas in Sabah, we also powered 2 townships from this renewable energy initiative. And we also have program from waste to wealth, the EFB, empty fruit bunch of the palm oil is turned into energy. So it again electricity to supply to national grid, which is used to power the local community. We have in Sabah, Pahang in particular for this program. Well, with regard that is with regard to our commitment on deforestation, and also how we ensure we support climate action initiative. And I hear quite a lot on the issue of human rights, social issues, labor issues. And I will not hide from saying that this is also an important area for FGV, given the attention that FGV is under from many aspects with regard to our labor practices. And what we have done since 2019 is we have revised our sustainability policy to include or to strengthen our commitment to respect human rights. So we have made it clear in our policy that, you know, we will not give way or compromise to any actions amounting to human trafficking, forced labor, and also child labor. And we have a number of programs now. We are working with a number of NGOs internationally and also locally to strengthen our labor practices from the point, especially with regard to migrant workers. You know, we have this collaboration with Fair Labor Association to ensure that, you know, the recruitment process of migrant workers, the retention process, and when they are going back is done in line with human rights standards. So this is an ongoing commitment for FGV, and with this program, we are committed to 5-year transformation program starting from 2020. And with the Fair Labor Association, one of the conditions that for that to be part of Fair Labor program is that we must be committed to public reporting. So in 2020, they have, you know, made public a report on FGV's progress and areas that are still lacking with regard to, you know, where we need to strengthen for our labor initiative. And another one is due in 2021, very soon, I guess. We are working towards it. So this is some of the initiative that we are taking. It suddenly went off, okay, to ensure that our operations are in line. So if I can just also highlight a bit about, since we are all in the spirits of Women's Day celebration, it's not easy to be a woman and working in a very male-dominated, you know, industry. But I believe the commitment from the board and also the commitment from the management of FGV to ensure that, you know, FGV becomes one of the international player at par with other international player in terms of our commitment to NDPE is very, very strong. You can see that. And I believe in time, we will be able to address a of challenges that FGV is facing at this moment. So I think I will stop here because the mic is giving signal that I should stop. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nurul. I think that was perfect time. You did your part on that. Thanks for sharing about this commitment that you have established, particularly ensuring that not only as an organization, but also your suppliers also, it goes through all the way. And secondly, is about the innovation that you're applying for reduction of carbon emission and supply of electricity to the grid. And as well as glad to hear that you're addressing the challenge, which the media has picked up a lot, and glad that you had the opportunity now to address that. And of course, in line with the International Women's Day, I'm glad to hear that ratio, and I'm also happy that I must make it a point and congratulate KSI to make this our panel equal, right? Otherwise, this morning somebody told me there's something called manel. I asked, what is manel? This means all male panel. So today we have 50-50. Huh? So I hope we maintain it the same way as we go as well. I've also told KSI, I think KSI knows that if there's no women on the panel, I don't speak, right? So it's kind of making sure that we're able to address that. Okay, so let's get to the next part. Speaker, Ms. Sikha Patnaik from Head of Marketing and Communication of Basis Bay. Over to you.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, KSI, for organizing this and giving us this opportunity. It's been really illuminating to listen to all the speakers all day long, and very excited to be here. Won't take a lot of time. I understand it's like late afternoon session. We'd like to wrap this up as soon as possible. And so a little bit about Basis Bay. Basis Bay is Malaysia's homegrown leading data center and private cloud solutions organization. Basis Bay has been in operation for 25 years. This year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. And one of our core values has been sustainability for 25 years. Our core values are integrity, sustainability, and leadership. And given the business that we are in, that is data centers and cloud solutions, sustainability has always been a focus area. We've had the foresight that the data center industry, which consumes a lot of energy, is going to become a very important focus as climate change. 25 years ago, climate change was not a big topic of discussion for other data center organizations in Malaysia and in Southeast Asia. Elements of a green data center, which include like sustainable architecture, efficient use of electricity, use of rainwater, stormwater. So we've been doing that. So the data center industry today globally consumes about 1%, 1 to 2% of energy globally. But that statistic does not really tell us a lot. It sounds little like, okay, it's just 1 or 2%. But the thing is, data center industry is not spread globally very uniformly. Data centers are concentrated in Western countries because that's where technologies first started growing. Information technology. So it's Europe and US where most of the data centers today are located. But there is a very clear shift happening from Western countries to Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Singapore is such a destination, it's a data center hub. The thing is, when we say 1% globally, it doesn't mean 1% for all of these locations. Singapore spends 7% of its energy annually on just the data center industry. So as more and more people in Asia are connecting to the internet, in this year of the pandemic, there has been an increase of 40% increase in internet usage in Asia alone. And there are still 2 billion people who are yet to be connected to the internet, which is a massive opportunity for all sorts of businesses. Asia is where the next boom is going to be. So for organizations who are in this space, it is a huge responsibility to ensure that we adopt technology, we take technology to those who are yet to be connected, but how do we do it in a way that is kind to the environment? So that is a focus for data centers and Basis Bay. This year, as part of our 25th anniversary, we're also launching a new campaign. We're taking clean IT. We're calling ourselves now Basis Bay Leading Clean IT, if some of you can read, but it's maybe a little too far away. We've been tagging ourselves as re-engineering IT for the last 25 years, but starting this year, we're going to be talking about clean IT. So what does clean IT mean to us? It's not just sustainability, but also anti-discrimination and more focus on ethics. So anti-discrimination, because as we were discussing in the previous panel, climate change is not going to affect everyone equally. Marginalized communities, marginalized groups based on like gender, class, caste, race, they're going to be affected more. And this is a focus area for us as well, part of our CSR. We don't have a sustainability or a CSR wing because this is something that every individual, every basis bearer contributes to. So that is some of the things we'll be doing this year. And for those who want to follow, look us up on LinkedIn and you'll get to know more about what are the clean IT initiatives we'll be taking this year. So regarding the pandemic again, just one pandemic has increased the internet usage by 40%. And this is going to sound very bleak, but there are more pandemics coming because of climate change. There are diseases that have been hibernating in the ice and the ice is melting. There are germs and bacteria that are like frozen and very, very well preserved, but as the ice melts, diseases that could be far deadlier than COVID are supposed to come. That's what scientists have been telling us. And this is a race against time. We have 10, maximum 15 years to do something radical before climate change becomes really irreversible. Not that we're going to become extinct in 10, 15 years, but climate change will probably become irreversible and it'll be really hard for us to get back. So what are some of the radical things that we can do? And this panel is about green technology, but I also want to take a different approach to what technology means for us over here. And there's been talk about overpopulation as well, right? That's something we've all internalized so much. The world is really overpopulated. That is why there is such a pressure on resources. But I would like all of us to step away from that thinking and start to look at the problem really being overproduction and overconsumption and not overpopulation. We have 8 billion people on this planet, but we do produce food for 10 billion people every year. And these are UN stats. 850 million people are still hungry or food insecure around the world, in spite of us producing more food than there are people. So what does this tell us? Is it like, there's a lot of food wastage. 40 million Americans out of this 850 million people around the world, there are just 40 million Americans who are food insecure in what is considered the world's richest country. So inequality across different groups based on identities, of course, that is a huge problem. There are resources we are producing, it's just not reaching the people that it needs to reach. So what does it tell us about global supply chains and distribution? We live in a world now where things are available, food is available to us around the year, all around the year. Things are not seasonal anymore. What does it tell us about our farming practices? So I think if we step away from overpopulation thinking and really start thinking about overproduction, overconsumption by a minority, it's not like overconsumption by everyone, right? And a lot of wastage. Can we do something around that area? So that is something that's going to be very radical if we have to combat climate change in the next 10 years. Something else that will be radical is we have to stop. I think it was in another panel before lunch, the addiction to growth. It was Ms. Luan's CH that I really like that point. We have to stop production for the sake of production for the sake of growth, and really start producing for the sake of need, for the sake of actual consumption. That is something radical that businesses around the world have to start adopting. And there's so much other wastage that we see around us. For example, yes, 26 million, about 17 million tons of clothing is discarded in the US alone every year. So does it really say, are we really living in a world of scarcity, or is there actually excess? There are 500,000 homeless people in the US, but 17 million vacant homes. That is like 60 vacant homes per homeless person. So is it really about scarcity or excess? Like that those are the radical, paradigm shifts we have to make in our thinking and approach to business. Another thing that I think the pandemic has revealed to us this year is globalization has its problems, has its risks, right? Global supply chains got disrupted, and economies just in the West that we consider, like really strong economies, they've got really affected. So why is this happening? And what can we do to, mitigate the risk of, should there be more pandemics or such disruptions in the future? We're looking at Western countries, developed countries for inspiration on how they're managing, climate. But what we miss when we look at that way of analyzing economies is that there isn't really much manufacturing that happens in the global north, right? Northern countries, they don't have much manufacturing. Those are services-driven economies. So of course, it's easier for them to manage their environments. There's also a lot of shipment of wastage, say from like developed countries to developing countries, including Malaysia, right? Like, and now I know some of the global South countries, we are standing up and saying, no, we won't take your waste, you'll have to process it yourself. Majority of the resources of the world exist in tropical climates, which is why so much of production is also happening in countries with, like the climate was conducive for production. But it's just putting so much pressure on global South countries to produce for the whole world. So what can developed countries do to shift production for their requirements in their economies? Can we have a more equitable distribution of, the pressure of production? Is that something that we can look at to combat climate change? And not put the onus on individuals, because we have to come together as a collective. That thought has also been shared, and I really support that. And another way of looking at technology, I think, is to start looking at indigenous epistemologies. That's been a recent, I was reading a recent publication by Harvard about something called low tech, lesser known technologies, and traditional economical knowledge. I think another radical way of looking at climate change is to change our relationship to land. Okay, my mic is also giving me signals, but I'll wrap it up in a minute.
I think we have another technology, right? On that.
Yeah.
You want to wrap?
Yeah, I'll just wrap
so
up
I can
in a
continue.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one way is to now look at our relationship to land. And this is something I'm drawing from an indigenous community, also from North America. We shouldn't think of land as something we inherit from our ancestors, but something that we borrow from future generations. And if you start looking at resources, the environment like that, we're more motivated to take care of it right now. So thank you. Those are the thoughts I had on this. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sikha. From green data centers to clean tech, clean IT, and also supply chain. And thanks for sharing that inputs. Let's move to our final speaker for the session, Farouz Nada, Executive Director, Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei. Over to you, Farouz.
Thank you, Anthony. I'll try to finish mine before my mic gives me the signal.
Okay, you got the idea of the technology.
Good afternoon, respected fellow panelists and distinguished guests. Many thanks to KSI for inviting me to be here today to share my views on the topic. So I'm from the UN Global Compact Network Malaysia, which is part of the United Nations Global Compact, which is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative with over 12,000 members. How many in the room have lived in cities all their life? So I've lived in all my life in cities, both in Malaysia and abroad, though at times I may romanticize of getting away from the rat race to a more relaxed rural life. In honesty, I do not believe I can survive outside my natural habitat. And I'm sure there are millions more like me, we work, live and play in cities. This makes today's topic a burning issue for our generation, a generation that is seeing pace of urbanization come hand in hand with various sustainability-related challenges. As my fellow panelists have shared various statistics on why cities are becoming increasingly unsustainable, I want to pose a question. Do residents make a city sustainable, or does a city make its residents sustainable? I'm of the opinion that a sustainable city is a representation of collective behaviors of its residents. The key word here being behavior, the actions that drive the everyday decision making, from children going to school, business leaders carrying out their activities, and consumers deciding how they pick the products or the services they want. All this amalgamate into a living sustainability culture of a city. So as much as we pour resources into green technologies that clean the power needed to run our homes and industries, it remains very much a hardware component that cannot push the needle without a reciprocal demand side by the individuals who give life to a city. As a city requires much care and attention, it is unfair to place the burden solely on policymakers and business providers. We cannot keep sheltering citizens from the responsibility to make and take better decisions and actions to contribute towards creation of a sustainable city. Citizens must demonstrate pushback and punish brazen acts of negative actions. If we do not exercise the power of collective individual actions, till then, we will always see the repeats of Sungai Kim Kim or haze due to open burning. Admittedly, an enabling ecosystem is required for citizens to plug in as good role models, but the best infrastructure still does not translate into a culture of positive actions without grassroots activism and inclusion in defining and designing a better living and loving space for all. One of the mantras of the SDGs is leaving no one behind, but often we underplay the value of social aspects of sustainable cities. Often around us are cases of exploitation of people, and we go around with eyes wide shut. Until we have the willpower to treat all city residents, be it local or foreign, well, till then we can only boast of having best-in-class buildings without the spiritual basis of sustaining a common living space that thrives in getting everyone on board. But I'm not here to be a doom-monger. I'm forever optimistic that we Malaysians can and must be a case for others to develop towards a more sustainable manner. And in this, I see the private sector as the main actor to lead this transformation. A good example is with the fast evolving sustainable finance space. With our banks offering various sustainability-linked products, this provides the opportunity for borrowers to reshape their business approach by being incentivized to behave in a more sustainable manner. For example, with Sarawak Energy committing to reduce their kilowatt per hour carbon footprint as part of their sustainability loan criteria, it bodes well for Kuching and other cities to be powered by cleaner sources of energy, and this is an immediate plug-in in our fight against climate change. But such financing should not only be confined only to the domains of large profitable businesses. It must be extended to struggling SMEs and individual consumers. As we speak of post-COVID recovery, The time is ripe for businesses willing to change or exit their comfort zones to access capital to continue to be competitive. This is an opportunity that we must not miss to embed how sustainability must be the newest component of license to operate. As for consumers, such financing opportunities must be made available for them to onboard into the sustainable city agenda, to invest into solar installation, for example, or better financing rates to purchase green properties. However, we too must broaden the concept of sustainable financing to include the stick as much as the carrot. When I was a student living in Australia, often I would be very conscious of the quick showers and energy management due to the dear cost of utilities. Such conditions forced me to be a sustainable consumer as it cost my pocket. As such, embedding the true cost of natural resources such as water and energy will accelerate the good behavior of individuals, which will compound into cleaner and better cities. The reduced subsidies can then be invested into better technologies that can future-proof our cities and enable sustainable living for all. We are now 1.25 years into the decade of action, which points we only have till 2030 to realize the SDGs. To reach our goal, we must mobilize everyone, everywhere, and produce innovative solutions for change. Again, businesses can be the forefront of change. Take, for example, Nestle's Careton project, which seeks to enable consumers to play their role in a circular economy, or disruptors such as Carousel, which enables longer usage life of pre-loved items. This points that innovation for sustainable cities must move into supply chain and consumer action. The key being acceptance that the ROI for such spending is creating a continuous positive environment that makes businesses resilient, and the acceptance that business operate within the same city living condition and experiences. I'd like to share my experience praying at the Cyberjaya Green Mosque. I picked this example by the simple fact that all religions espouse us to lead sustainable lives, and that I can pray in a building that uses no aircon alongside thousands of others, yet in cool comfort, despite the blazing hot sun, is proof that we can have our sustainability cake and eat it too. Sustainable cities is not a pipe dream, it is built on the back of sustainable citizens and businesses. I end my opinion on how multi-stakeholders can contribute in enabling sustainable cities. For businesses, start borrowing via sustainable financing instruments, as this enables a language acceptable by all internal stakeholders and requires conformity with sustainable actions. For citizens, know and accept the true cost of consumption and accept the stick approach as much as the carrot. For governments, disclose more ESG data to the public so better future-proof decision-making can be done by individuals and businesses. And for civil society, accelerate progress by innovating with the private sector, but with a clear understanding that businesses are made to profit. This is not a bad thing, but they need support on how to profit in a sustainable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Feroz, and you kept it before the mic went off. Yeah. Okay. All right. So thanks for sharing this collective individual action perspective. Also about sustainability finance, and I think if financing is ensuring all conditions, businesses are also going to ensure it's followed effectively as well. And also about creating a lot of awareness through the entire supply chain. How do we make sure that we ensure that this is done? Okay, now I think we are moving to the next part of question and answers. We had an agreement, right? All of you with me on that? Okay, I think so. Huh? All right, so I'll start with the first question. Can I check? Sofia, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks, Sofia. Sofia, question to you from me. You've done a great initiative for Penang, and not only recognized as from a country perspective in terms of the initiatives, but also globally recognized. And recognition also must come in the form of kind of financial support to sustain it, right? And you have accomplished that as well. Can you share with us what are those aspects that you got to achieve that, and how do you think we can replicate it in other cities in Malaysia?
Thank you, Anthony. That's a very good question, because actually I think the strength of our program was precisely the way the four components were addressed and intertwined. So actually, coupling social resilience with physical resilience is extremely important. We know that vulnerable communities usually live in more exposed parts of the cities. We know that schools for more vulnerable communities have less access to information. We know that vulnerable communities have less access to air-conditioned spaces, both at work and in transportation. So a holistic approach is absolutely essential. And I think this is the global challenge of climate change, also in terms of knowledge sharing. So when we've created the platform, the knowledge transfer program, this was actually, it was created very naturally, because we thought we are generating all this knowledge. There's no point in keeping this knowledge only for ourselves. And how the other cities in Malaysia, and not only in Malaysia, in the region, in Southeast Asian region, can benefit so much from this. And because we're getting international funding, why not have this sharing approach? So this is actually with the Global Partnerships SDG, because it's under climate change, we need to understand we need partners, and we cannot do things together, either as cities or businesses or any parts of society. We need to do all of this together.
Thank you, Sofia, for giving the perspective, and I think it's a very valuable one, and we want to make sure that we embrace the success that you have done. And I like the global partnership initiative that can become almost like a city partnership within Malaysia, right? Thank you for that. Can I now invite any questions from our audience, our delegates? Any questions, any inputs? All right, so if that's the case, then I'm going to ask the next question as well. All right, okay, to Encik Shamsul, question on some practical aspects that we can apply with green tech into cities and rural areas, right? How do we ensure that we address the SDG goals, but applying the green tech into cities and rural areas? How do we ensure that we can achieve it from a practical advice perspective?
All right, thank you, Anthony. There were a few programs under Malaysian Green Tech that we introduced to the local municipalities. We have one, which is the Low Carbon 2030 Challenge, that we put forth a challenge to the municipalities on how to reduce their carbon footprint, okay, greenhouse gas emission as well. So what we introduced to them certain technologies that they can adopt. One is introducing solar rooftop panels in order to reduce the dependency on fossil fuel energy coming in from power plants. Then we also introduced the usage of LEDs throughout the buildings, right? And we did audits on the building as well. So these are some of the technology that we introduced to the municipalities. We also have the rainwater harvesting that we wanted most of the new developments, either is residential or buildings, to include in their design. So in a way that we can use rainwater for other things that you use water for, planting, washing your car, rather than the ones that coming from the water supply. And so this is not a lot of things that we can actually show to the public that they can actually adopt. We also have the composting program where you compost the organics and you can use them as fertilizers. But the idea of usage of green technology have to start from the whole ecosystem, from the supply of the energy itself. Use renewable energy, for example, on instead of using fossil fuel. We utilize the hydrogen as the energy carrier. Usage of mobility, which electromobility, introducing more of the electric vehicles. Even the charging station that we'll be introducing are also off the grid. So there are a lot of initiatives they are pouring into the technology, into the Malaysian context. But what we are lacking is the technology coming from our local industry. We are much more relying on the foreign technologies, but to sustain sustainable development of a country, we need to have our own technology. We cannot just be depending on foreign. This goes as well to the universities. When you go to universities, you can see a lot of technology, a lot of innovations coming from them. But then again, the focus that the university has more towards completing the journal and have the publication. So that's where they are happy with. So this needs to be unearthed, uncovered. So at Malaysian Green Technology Collaboration Center, this is what we do. We are the catalyst to bridge between the universities and the industry to introduce more technology that we can use in our daily lives.
Thank you, Shamsul. In the interest of time, I'm going to do a quick wrap. We heard from all 5 of the panelists and 1 from Penang, but I'm going to borrow some of the inputs from everyone. And I think particularly, I looked at each one's input on their real life experience and what each one is going from. The first thing I think I looked at collective individual action. I think that makes a big difference for individuals as citizen power, I call it, in terms of how you connect it. And then we are talking about business, empowering businesses using sustainable financing. Yeah, how do you look at that green perspective? The next one I'm going to borrow from Sofia is the holistic approach, making sure you're connecting everybody. And I like the knowledge platform that Penang uses. And at the same time, also the global partnership perspective, right? And we are looking at it. And even if we do have made mistakes, we have to take corrective actions and make it visible and make it transparent. So with that, may I invite you to give a round of applause to our panelists, and let's close the session. Thank you.